Welcome to the Healing My Parts podcast, a podcast dedicated to educating and raising awareness about dissociative identity disorder, also known as DID. We are your hosts, the system behind Healing My Parts, which also includes parts that function as a therapist and leader in a mental health niche space. We'll be sharing tips and tools that have helped us and many others, while also sharing insights from our own journey of living with the condition. We'll also be hosting guests for conversations to help educate, dispel myths, and most especially help those living with dissociative identities and professionals who treat the condition. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now, let's get healing. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to introduce you to a new friend of ours, the Shadow System. And I'm going to dive right in by saying, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Shadow System, can you let people know from your perspective what you would most like them to know about you?
Yeah, of course. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. I am the shadow system, and I have been aware of being a system for about a year and a half. So I just want to throw that out there that while that may sound like a bit of time, it's actually not that much time, still feels brand new, still navigating everything. So I'm excited to talk about that.
I'm excited to dive in because I feel like a lot of times when people are looking online for information, we get it from people who have known about being a system for a long time, and you can forget what it feels like when you first find out. And for people who
Yes.
are new, can you take us back to when you first started wondering if you might be a system, what that was like for you?
Yeah, I will do my best to describe how that experience went down. My whole life, I felt different and tried to understand myself for what feels like ever. It was about 2.5 or 3 years ago, I finally ended up getting a diagnosis of autism and ADHD, which I thought was the peak answer that gave me all of the insight I needed. And then it was a year later that I realized something else was going on. I started finding some writings that I didn't remember writing. Facebook memories popped up of things that I definitely thought I should have remembered. I had no memory whatsoever, even though there were photos to prove that it happened. And I started really thinking about my life yet again, remembering that I had Googled schizophrenia for myself many times prior and never fitting that. And I just started piecing some things together, and it started to paint a very clear picture. There's a lot of denial, a lot of second guessing, a lot of I don't seem to fully fit the criteria, but also I do. And it was confusion, but also very eye opening.
When you said, I don't seem to fully fit the criteria, that is something that comes up all the time for people because when you read the technical definition in the DSM, for example, the language is so clinical and you look at it and you think, wait, I don't think that's it. But I think sometimes, and I'm curious if this was the case for you, when you start listening to other people who are multiple talk and they talk about their experiences and what it's like to be them, I feel like that's when some of the light bulbs start going off and you're like, oh, that happens to me. Oh, that happens to me too. Wait, that happens to me too. Did you have moments like that?
I did have some moments like that. There were not a lot in the beginning because I wanted to be very careful with fully accepting that this was the case because if this is not what was going on with me, I wanted to figure it out. I researched a little bit. I'm gonna laugh here. I did some quote unquote research through TikTok, which a lot of what I found I did not fully relate to, which made me question a little more. It wasn't until I really started digging through YouTube and finding content there. And I think it was the Rings system, I believe, who really gave me a lot of insight and things really started clicking for me. They talked a lot about OSDD, I believe it was, and I was thinking, that's what it is. But I kept thinking, you don't know what you don't know. You can't remember what you don't remember. And I knew there were some things from my childhood that I have no memory of, or I didn't, and I have gotten bits and pieces from there. And just listening to other DID systems, things did start to click. There was not like one big moment where I heard people talk and I was like, that's me. It was just a cumulation of lots of little moments and going back and rereading my old journals. I feel like my documented history that I've done for so long was one of the biggest insights that I got was from my own self, surprisingly.
Actually, what a gift to have access to old journals. Not everybody has them. Sometimes people will shred them or they want to just kind of disengage from their past completely because it's painful, right? What was that like going through your journals and reading? What did that feel like for you?
I had gone back and reread journals multiple times before, just trying to understand things in my life. I have always recognized that I had different handwritings. That was something that always frustrated me, but looking back with a different idea behind it this time was really eye-opening because there were a lot of times I would refer to myself as we, or I would talk about the bad me would wake up versus the good me. And when the bad me wakes up, this happens. And there were a few instances of things that happened that I talk about. I don't remember this happening, but here are the signs that this happened. I was in a traumatic situation for a long time, and there were times when I was drinking and I just kind of like had excuses for everything. Looking back, it just paints a very clear picture to where it's like, how did I miss this? Which, of course, we're not supposed to know about this. It's the nature of DID, so I understand that. It was wild. It was a wild experience going back and rereading and seeing things finally for what it really was.
Yeah. It must be liberating to a degree to sort of feel like, oh, wait, I have this explanation for things that were confusing.
Yes, 100%. Like I said earlier, I got a diagnosis of autism ADHD, and I felt like that was it. That
Yeah.
felt very liberating. And then when things were still going on that could not be explained by that, I felt stuck in the trenches again. So when I finally figured this out and learned about it more and saw the evidence and signs, it was very liberating. Very liberating, for sure.
This is just a side note because you had mentioned having different handwritings and how frustrating that was for you. And you are
Yes.
actually the first person that I've spoken to that described it that way because that was my experience with my handwriting ever since I was in middle school. I remember having these days where I always wanted my notebooks to look nice and pretty with these neat handwriting, which
Yes.
a part of me does have, but other parts do not. And I would
Yes.
just be like, why can't I write?
Yes, I think yes. I mean, same experience. My friends all had that stereotypical flowy, swirly handwriting. I was always so jealous, and I would practice trying to do that. And every once in a while, it seemed like we could master that, but it was never consistent. And looking back now, I can see patterns of different writings, and I'm like, okay, these parts have been around for a very long time, and they're all very consistent, and I can start picking up on the different writings. But yes, it was a very frustrating experience, especially as a young teenager, for sure. Why is my handwriting so messy? And then the next day, why is it so pretty? And what? Yes,
Can it be like
yeah.
this all the time? What would you say those kind of early days or weeks after you discovered your system, what were those like for you?
I would say it felt strange, it felt liberating, it also felt like I could take a deep breath for the first time in a very long time. I also felt like I was in a fog for quite a while. Coming to grips with it, relearning things, going through, I think, what a lot of people go through if they don't have memory of past events, of feeling scared of, well, what happened then? Kind of feeling off balance of like, what do I not know? And getting into a panicky state. And it really felt like the fact that I now knew what was going on, I immediately tried to start interacting with the parts of me in the system, which doesn't always work that that easily as I thought it would. There were a few that seemed really excited to start interacting and expressing themselves and actually like fronting with my husband. That was a few months down the line. It was a very wild roller coaster of a first 6 months, I'll say. It was just very much a fog and feeling very dizzy and feeling like, "Oh, I know all of the parts, there's only 3," and
Sorry.
relatively quickly I know, I think we've all been through that, especially as I've listened to your podcast and others.
Sorry.
I now aware of, like, a solid, like, maybe 13 so far, and I know that there's some others.
Yeah.
So, It was a very I can only describe it as a ride, a very up and down roller coaster ride.
I still remember having a few instances of feeling like the world was surreal when you realize that it's actually a real thing. And I think there is this natural tendency to say exactly what you had mentioned earlier. How did I miss this? But it really is designed to protect us and be covert. So we wouldn't notice. And it's so easy to offer everyday explanations to things that are a little different that we experience.
Yes.
And not being
No.
inside other people's heads, it's hard to know what they experience, you know?
Yes. Yeah, it's yeah. You summed that up good.
Well, I remember when Mike Lloyd was on a while back, and he was talking about what it was like to be in his head and how it was quiet, and it just blew my mind. I'm like, "Wait, what?
Yes, I watched that as well,
It's quiet?"
and part of me was like, "That sounds really nice," and then another part was like, "That sounds really boring." I don't know what it would be like to have a quiet mind. The
Yeah.
very few days where things do feel quiet, I think I enjoy it, but then I also start going down that spiral of, "Wait, none of this is real. This is fake. It's not real. I don't have parts. I don't have" like, this is and then very quickly the next day, it's like, "Oh, wait, no, this is real." It's the back and forth for sure. That happens a little less now, being a year and a half in and really just, like, fully accepting and like, "Okay, this is it." So the days where there's doubt, it's been really good just to tell myself, "Trust yourself, trust your system. This is real," and there's no real benefit to doubting. I understand it's a protective mechanism, but just full acceptance is how I try to live.
Have you noticed if there are parts in your system that are more accepting of being plural and other parts that might deny it more often? I'm just curious if you've noticed any patterns that way.
I think so. There are some who definitely embrace it. I can think of a couple right off the bat who they find it almost humorous. They're more lighthearted, like to have relationship and have fun. I would feel like I'm the part in my system that does the doubt sometimes. And it's like I catch it because it is when I'm starting to feel low or feel bad. And it's easier to deny it and try to tell myself either I made it up or I had told my therapist one time in a session, half jokingly, I'm like, "Do you think I'm just bored? And this is why, like, did I just make this up because I'm so bored?" And we had a laugh because we both know that's not true. But sometimes it's easier to try to deny because to not deny it means to face it
Yeah.
and have to work with it and live with it, which is I think the healthier option to embrace it. Denial has its place in little pockets of time, I think.
I love that you were like, "Do you think I'm just bored?" Because I'm like, I mean, if you're bored, you could pick up crocheting or something.
I know. It would be a very elaborate thing to come up with from boredom and to keep track and to be so consistent. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
possible.
That's one of the things that stands out to me so much about living with DID or OSDD, with people who are saying, "Oh, am I making this up?" Because we all say that, right? We really do.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, making it up would require a significant amount of intention, and I have no idea how you would track and stay on top. There's too much to keep track of.
Yeah.
I think that would be impossible. I'm sure there are some people that could pull it off for a short period of time, but throughout time as there's longevity, that seems pretty impossible to me.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's been validating time and time again when I do go back and read old journals or I've pulled boxes out from the basement of my childhood things and I start seeing how some of these parts that I now know existed back then and there's evidence and proof. It's very validating to look back and be like, "Okay, like, there is no way I made this up."
Yeah.
Like, it was there when I was young and I had no awareness of anything. And it's also honestly, I've found in some ways it can be comforting because there's a lot of discomfort within learning about this and sitting with it and what it stems from. But the fact that some of these parts have been there for so long, in some way, that's like a constant, even if I wasn't fully aware of it. Now, as an adult, being like, some of these have been there for so long. protecting and looking out for me and taking things on that I wouldn't have been able to. I try to look at it in a positive lens when I can. It's comforting. When other people weren't there when we needed them, they were here, you know?
Yeah. Do you feel like when you got to a place where you're like, "Okay, I think this is what's going on for me," did you have parts that literally just felt an incredible amount of relief, like, "Finally"?
I yeah. Again, yeah, there were a few that were just ready to interact and be there and be like, "Let's go. Let's, like, get to know the others. Let's figure this out," and it was a relief. Some of them, I think, definitely felt relieved. They could kind of ease up a bit on their job. I could take some of that on, some of the stuff that they had been carrying for so long, and again, with it being a year and a half that I've been aware, seems like a long time, not really a long time. Some of this I'm still in the middle of. I'm still learning about parts. There are parts that still are very closed off to me. So I'm still very much in the thick of this. I'm curious how the answer would be to some of these questions, years down the road. I'm sure they'll change.
I mean, to be honest, I was diagnosed in '93, right? And I still meet new parts,
Yeah.
you know? I still learn things about my system, and communication is an interesting thing, which is something that I think everyone is really curious about. So when you said, "I started interacting with parts of my system," I wonder if you could describe maybe a little more specifically about some of the things that you did to get that communication going, to have that interaction, or was it just like it was just there? What was that like?
It's definitely been a learning process and it's evolved over the last year and a half. In the very beginning, I was of the mindset of, oh, well, they're all part of me and they feel like they're in my head and in my body, so I can just talk directly to them because they're going to hear it. I quickly learned that that's not exactly how it works. There's a few that does work well, just like an internal dialogue. Sometimes I'll talk out loud if I feel like it's something that I really have to get across. And then sometimes things would go quiet, which threw me off because I'm like, I should just be able to have this interaction. What's going on? So I started writing. I got a new journal that's separate from my other ones, and I kind of had this inner conversation of this journal is for all of us, it's for the system, and everyone can write in here. Please do. Whatever you want. It doesn't have to be trying to communicate to each other. It can just be whatever. And that works for some of them. There are times open the journal and there's things in there that I don't have memory of being written, or it's like I read it and it feels like a dream because I can almost grasp, oh, yeah, I guess that happened, but it's not quite there. I also did make it very known within the system that whatever is written in there is fair game in therapy. I felt that was important to like make sure that everyone knew that whatever was written in there will probably also be seen by the therapist. So I'm sure that there are parts that don't partake in there
Mhm.
because of that. But also, as time has gone on, art has started to come back in the picture, and I find that that's also a very good way to communicate, especially for parts who don't have the words for what they want to express. Visualization and creating things is very powerful. Art used to be a big part of our life for many years, and then it just stopped, and that was something I never understood, which I understand now. It just stopped. As soon as I got in a safe relationship with someone who truly had my best interest in heart and loved me and loved all of us even without him knowing, the art stopped, and I think it was because for a while we no longer had to live in survival mode. We felt safe, and so a lot of the parts calmed down. Which was frustrating to me because I didn't understand what was happening, and I'm like, "Why can't I access this art side of myself anymore?" I felt like the skill and the talent and the creativity within my own mind disappeared. It was infuriating on my end. Now that I understand what happened, I'm like, "That actually is quite beautiful," and I think that that time for everyone to rest was needed. Now that we are digging things up and uncomfortable feelings and memories are coming up. Art has suddenly been happening again. It's wild. I love it. It's very interesting to see what gets put on the sketch pad. Some of it I do, some of it other parts do. I have found things that clearly very young parts have done that throws me off because I'm like, whoa, I didn't know that they would communicate that way. So that's a very long-winded response, but it's really a mix of just internal verbal communication, journaling, art, and whatever else comes next because I'm sure there's gonna be other things that pop up that this part needs communication in this way and whatnot.
I think that it's so helpful to hear how people are approaching communication within their system because so many people expect to just start out with these full conversations in the headspace, and that's not always how it works, right? Sometimes parts are communicating through physical sensations, images, memories, cravings, and yes, writing and conversations, and somehow just information that downloads.
Oh, yeah. That's been interesting. Sometimes it's like all of a sudden I just know something that I didn't know before, and
Yeah,
it's there.
isn't that wild?
Yeah, and I'm like, "That didn't quite come from me." It's great when it happens, but I'm like, "That's interesting." And you just mentioned communication through physical means, and that's definitely something I experienced that I'm still learning to work with. I've dealt with anxiety my whole life, and of course, that manifests in many physical ways. I do feel that I'm picking up on the difference on what physical sensations stem from,
Yeah.
which is something that I'm trying to get better at. Feeling something, acknowledging that this might be coming from a part, and then trying to have that conversation of what does it need? Or does it just need me to sit with this feeling? Or what does this stem from? Are you trying to tell me something? And it's a very big, overwhelming learning process.
Really is. It is not always necessarily intuitive. Sometimes you realize I think it comes up in therapy a fair amount for people, when you're having a conversation, then all of a sudden your throat closes and you can't speak,
Yes.
right? Is that a part that's saying, "No, we're not ready to go there today," or "You're not allowed," or whatever it might be? Or
Yeah.
you're in therapy with an agenda for yourself, and all of a sudden your head is so incredibly it's like cotton in your head, or it's so full, or you're dizzy, or there's so many different sensations that can happen that are parts potentially creating a traffic jam, or who knows? They're just different
Yeah.
things that come up,
Yep.
and trying to decode that language is not always easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, there are things that I've experienced in therapy and immediately following therapy that I know is not linked to any other reasoning besides it being like a part trying to communicate, like ears ringing for sure. There was one session somewhat recently where we were broaching on some heavy topics. I don't fully remember, of course I don't, what it was we
Mhm.
were talking about. I do remember as I was leaving the therapist's office, my legs suddenly felt like dead weight. Like I felt like I couldn't move. It was the most odd sensation I've ever experienced. I had to sit down and I felt as if I can't move. I felt almost paralyzed. It was a very interesting sensation because I could move. I had to get up. I had to get to the car, but it just really felt like something was trying to stop me. And my therapist is amazing. I love her so much. We have so much trust for her, which continues to build. And I had talked to her about that. And she had mentioned, maybe this is a big protector trying to tell us to slow down. We can't always just dive in. She's very good at acknowledging and watching me, body language, picking up on things, and acknowledging that these parts are here, protectors are here, sometimes to slow us down.
Yeah.
We don't need to speed past them because that's never going to be beneficial.
I've always heard the rule of thumb, you can only go as fast as the slowest part in your system.
Yes,
Kinda makes
that's very
sense,
true.
right?
Very true.
So, curious about what therapy's been like for you since discovering that you're plural. Did you need to get a new therapist? Is this a therapist you've always worked with? How did your work shift or change?
Yeah, so after I came to the conclusion with no doubt that okay, I have DID. I needed to find a therapist. I had done years and years of therapy before, but it had been a few years where I was out of therapy, thought I had a grasp on life, and then this happened. I became aware and I wanted to be very upfront and honest with hiring a therapist, so I sent out emails to a lot of different people in the area who specialized in trauma. And I put in the initial contact that I strongly believe I have DID. Nobody emailed me back, which was
Shocking.
somewhat that's why I wanted to put it in the email. I wanted to weed out any professionals who were not willing to engage in that. At one point, somebody did respond to me, and so I went with them. I didn't know much about them. He was an older gentleman, really well-intentioned, seemed to really care, didn't know much of anything about DID. would tell me most every session that something really bad had to have happened to me for this to be a thing. He also wanted to tell me every session I was very intellectually sophisticated and that he really urged me to go back to school to become a therapist, which is a compliment, but also not what I needed. And then one day he came in and said, "Oh, I read a book about DID and I'm learning that it's on a spectrum and you're on the end where it's not very disabling in your life." And he was trying to be encouraging by being like, "Oh, you're on the end where it's not really a big deal." And I'm very polite. I don't always speak my mind. So I was like, "Okay," like, "Thank you."
What were you really thinking?
I wanted to say, "You don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
I have so much to learn. Yeah, he would also tell me every week I should go to meetup.com, which is an older website, and find a friend group. I From my viewpoint, he really was very well-intentioned. He was just in way over his head. Thought I needed friends. So I told him, "This isn't working. We're not a good match." And it just so happened that my husband had just recently started seeing a therapist, and he was talking to her about me, and she seemed to know about DID, knew the terminology, knew way more than the guy I was seeing did. So, ended up reaching out to her. We had a chat. Seemed like a great fit. I've been seeing her now for about 6 months, and I can't say enough good things about her. She's really awesome, willing to learn, was very upfront that she's not a specialist with DID. She's willing to learn alongside me. She's going to make mistakes, but that we can continue to move on together. And she's been really just, again, I can't say enough good things about her. My whole system, I feel, loves her. Loves, loves, loves her. And that's a really good feeling to feel like everyone's on the same page. So, again, very long winded response to your question, but therapy has been great. I think it's important to find someone who is willing to learn and willing to work. It's not always feasible to find a specialist who has a lot of experience in DID, but if it's someone who's willing to put in the work, learn, listen to you, because you're going to be the expert in your own experience. You may
Yeah.
not know every, but you know your
Yeah.
own experience. It's important that they're going to believe you, not gaslight you. It's important to have that trust on every level, which can take some time to build. But once you build that, I think there's not really going to be much stopping you. Maybe some parts of your system will slow you down a bit, but you're going to be able to move forward.
It sounds like the 2 of you have such a beautiful partnership. You know, when you think about the relationship as the vehicle for healing, it sounds like you both have all of the ingredients for this to just be a beautiful therapeutic healing relationship.
Yes, she's great. I sent her your podcast a few weeks ago and I was like, "I don't expect you to listen to this, I was a little antsy about it, skittish." And I went back next session. She's like, "Oh, I listened to it." I was like, "You did?" And she really enjoyed it. So she's willing to take time outside of our sessions to learn and listen and watch. And that goes a long way for me personally and a lot of the parts in the system. That's kind of like, okay, we can trust because she's willing to be there.
I think there is this narrative that you need to go find somebody who has been working with people who have DID for decades or something. And, you need somebody who has some trauma background, who has an understanding, like a basic understanding, willing to learn, and most of all, willing to allow you to be their teacher. And
Yes,
you figure it
exactly.
out together.
Yes, that is so important. I do want to put out there as well that it's very important as well for everything I just said, but for the therapist to be someone who will listen to your feedback, even if it's maybe even against the way that they typically practice therapy. I wanna say my therapist is a specialist in IFS. She's also an art therapist, and I had heard mixed things about IFS, the internal family systems, and something about it, even though she was modifying it for DID, which was great, something about it still kept throwing me off here and there. I couldn't quite grasp the concept. We weren't doing a lot of IFS within our sessions, but parts of it were in there. And it was actually just recently I kind of told her how this didn't sit well. Sometimes when you say this, it makes me feel this way. And we had a very honest conversation about it. And she really listened. And it felt safe enough to I don't wanna necessarily say I pushed back on it, but I was open about how some things just didn't sit right. And some of it I really do enjoy. So we were able to have an honest conversation about that, and, okay, how can we bring it in to session and make it work, and then what parts of this will not work. And she was very open about asking me, "What do you need from me? What would you like for me to say? How would you like to do this?" She really gives me all the control, and I just wanna say to someone who is new, possibly new or not new, within being aware of having DID, that it is so important to have a therapist who is willing to, like you said, learn from you and also listen to feedback, even if it's not
Yeah.
always positive and happy. Someone who's not gonna like loom over you like they are the ultimate authority and they know way more than you because that's not a healthy therapeutic relationship, in my opinion.
I don't know how you would blossom in a relationship where the therapist is the authoritarian know-it-all, if you will.
Yes.
That would be pretty hard to I think, to even just allow yourselves to be authentic.
Mhm.
That type of person to me feels really judgy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's easy to do, especially if someone doesn't have a lot of experience in therapy. A lot of us have that fawning response, and I've done that in therapy for many years and really would be like, "No, they do know best. They do know best." Even though it didn't sit right inside of me, I'm like, "Well, they know more than I do." Making. So it's important to trust yourself, listen to your system,
Yeah.
listen to whatever feeling you get in your gut, those voices in your head, like, they're all very important, and I just want people to trust themselves, honestly, that's a big thing for me, to
Yeah.
know that you have what it takes, trust your system, trust yourself, just so highly important. That's been something newer I've been dealing with within myself, so that's why I'm like, it's so adamant, just trust, trust, trust.
It is important in every aspect, I think it's important, and when we're talking specifically about the therapy relationship, you're right, it is really easy to get into that space of, "Oh, they know more than I do, they're the professional with training, I must be doing this wrong." But
Yes,
really, if something's not working for you, it's not working for you, and the
exactly.
therapist needs to be able to pivot and take
Yeah,
feedback from you. And that's the piece that I think gets missed sometimes, especially by people, like you said, who are new in therapy, that they don't necessarily realize that good therapists depend on your feedback to be able to deliver the care that is best for you or that feels good to you and that is effective. Without your feedback, they just think whatever they're doing is working,
yes,
and it might
yes.
not be.
Exactly, they're not mind readers as much as, like, I had wanted to believe that for a very large portion of my life. They're not, they're human too, and a very collaborative relationship is very important.
Yeah, it's yours sounds so compassionate and respectful. It sounds like you really have an awesome partnership.
I I feel like I found a rare one, to be honest. I know there's a lot out there like that, but I have done years and years of therapy with many different therapists, and she is yeah, she's definitely a special one.
People don't have the benefit of seeing the glow on your face. You have this
Yes.
really nice smile, and you can just see your warmth and affection for her. It sounds like your relationship is just so special, and that's fantastic.
It is, and she we meet 3 times a week, so that's a lot. It started off with once, and she started seeing maybe twice a week would be beneficial, and then it turned into, "Okay, I think you need 1 more session," and I was like, "Yes," and I felt almost guilty, like, "I'm so sorry." She's like, "No, if you need 3 sessions, you need 3 sessions, like, this is fine." So, yeah,
Taking up
she's special.
space is hard.
Yeah.
Like, it really is hard to take up space, and for many people, taking up space has been dangerous historically.
Yes, yes,
You don't wanna
exactly.
be a burden, you don't wanna be too much, you don't wanna be annoying, you don't want them to get rid of you, you know?
Mhm.
So the
Yes.
reluctance makes a lot of sense, and it's what you need, and what you need is okay.
Yes. Yes. It takes a while for me to get there to say it's okay that I need this. It's okay. I am worth this. We are worth this. The system is worth it. And I just want to acknowledge to those listening who, again, may be in this similar space that I'm in, or even earlier on, that it is okay for you to want more for yourself. It's okay for you to want to have good help. It's okay for you to take up space. It's okay for you to safely talk about what you're going through. Yeah, these things are they're really big on my heart, so that's why I'm like, I just want people
Yeah.
to know this. It's okay. It's okay to go through this. In the beginning, I felt like, oh no, it's another thing that I'm putting my husband through. He's my rock. And he was also kind of like, well, I'm in it for the ride. And it's very important to have people like that. I know that not everyone has that, which is unfortunate. But if you can find anyone, whether it's just one friend or therapist or even an online community, you're worth having that. That's what I want. I want others to know that and really just latch on to that.
When you think about letting other people know, your husband or potentially a friend, how do you bring it up? How do you let people know? What was that like for you with your husband?
It's a good question. I had known about this within myself for about 4 or 5 months before I told my husband. I was really kind of dealing with it on my own. I actually have a friend that I've been friends with for many years, online friends, we met online. And as I was coming to this realization within myself, I somehow suddenly knew, like we talked about earlier, this person that I know has DID. And it was very interesting because it was something that I think I subconsciously knew. They're fairly open about it, but I genuinely think my system never let that quite penetrate that that's something that they dealt with because it would have been eye-opening for me possibly too soon. So I did have someone to reach out to, which was great. They were walking me through things and helping me sort some things out, which then eventually gave me the confidence to bring it up to my husband. I think we were sitting in bed one morning having coffee, and I was just like, I've got to let you know something. And I was very gentle of like, I think this is what I'm dealing with. I didn't really have any doubts at the time, but I didn't want to just throw it on them. Like, this is exactly what's happening. And he was very receptive to it. Like, okay, we've been through a lot of big things before. This is just another part of the ride. This is more answers. And he was just really holding me in that moment of like, it's not a big deal. We both knew it was a big deal, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. We're going to figure this out together. He really is my rock. No relationship is perfect, but just like my therapist, I call him like the unicorn of a man. He's incredible. Listens to everything I have to say, supports me. It never seems like it's too much for him. It can cause tension for sure. I don't want anyone to think like, oh, it's all perfect. It causes tension, confusion sometimes. But the important thing is that he's always there. I'm never concerned that he's going to leave, cut me off, say it's too much. He's a very constant in my life. And he doesn't freak out. So that from what I remember from that initial conversation, there was no freak out, no, this is too much. His one concern was from the stereotypes that are out there. He's like, "Is there gonna be, like, an alter in your system that wants to hurt me or the kids?" Because we have kids. And it just took me reassuring, like, "No, like, that's not really how it operates. If anything, we're more likely to be harmed from
Yep.
other people,
Yep.
or that if we have a part in us that has maybe a scarier, more harmful energy, that's usually turned on ourselves. And it's also
Yep.
done in a protective way, which of course that's something that needs to be sorted out. But yeah, so for anyone else preparing to have that conversation, I don't know if I have any advice except for just be sure that you feel ready for it and you feel secure in the person that you're telling. You can only know so much. You may not know how someone's going to react, but if you have a pretty good sense that they're going to be there for you through it, then that's good. Obviously, you don't wanna just go telling anybody and everyone, which can be a temptation, especially with social media. Not everyone is gonna be as excited about it as some of us are when we first discover a feeling like we have answers.
Your description of that conversation is so helpful because you set the stage by letting him know that you had something important to talk about in a quiet moment together, which I think is important to be able to create that kind of space for a conversation of this depth. But you also needed to give him some education because apparently popular media and Hollywood has this
Yeah.
stereotype that leads everybody to think we all harbor some kind of internal serial killer or something, and clearly we don't.
Yeah,
But it was really beautiful how you laid that out to show people that you have this really loving husband who's so open and who's like, okay, okay. like, I love you and we're going to figure this out. And I'm here. I'm walking beside you through this. And your loving husband is still somebody who consumes the popular media that's out there and had, based on that, a question that is reasonable, but that some people can interpret as being hurtful. When I
Yes.
think the question really was innocent, right? Just based on the information that he had access to. And
Yes.
you sounded like you were so able to just be like, nope, that's not how it works. Completely okay with just giving that education. And I do think it's really important that people be prepared to have those educational parts of the conversation, that it's not as if people, no matter how loving they are not coming with stereotypical information that comes from popular media. So be
Yes.
prepared to diffuse it. And it doesn't mean anything. It just means the person in your life has heard it before.
Yeah, exactly. And he did some of his own research as well, and I sent him some information. I think it took him hearing from a few other people online or whatever he read to really feel settled that, okay, there's nothing dangerous about this. He believed what I said, but of course, you're still going to have maybe that gnawing sense in the back of your mind of like, but what if? Which I appreciate from him coming from a protective standpoint of wanting to make sure that, okay, let's make sure however this gets dealt with, we're all safe and we're all continuing to stay close knit and there's no issues there. So,
Yeah. I mostly wanted to highlight that because when you have a conversation, right, most people feel super vulnerable.
yes,
And if there is something that the other person, be it a friend, a parent, a partner, whatever, starts researching and double checking information, it is important to not take that personally. It's the
yes.
only way they can educate themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, that can go one of 2 ways. I think it could be easy to take it personally, 100%. I'm so thankful that with my husband, like, we've learned how to communicate, and we kind of know that each of us have the best interest at heart, and we want the best for each other, which has made it easier to not take things so personally. Of course, I still do from time to time. We all do.
Sure.
But I chose to take him doing more research and hearing from other people as a form of him loving me and supporting me, not putting all the work on me or the system to educate him. We do a lot
Well,
of that naturally. I'm like a researcher. I love researching and understanding the ins and outs of absolutely everything psychology related. But the fact that he took initiative on his own, it was great. That to me, I felt very held and secure and seen in that moment. And knowing that on his own time, he wanted to understand more, which goes a long way.
yeah. I mean, he's engaged, right? He didn't dismiss it. He didn't disengage from it like, oh, figure that out on your own. He
Yeah.
really just dove in, it sounds like.
Yeah, he did, which is a great starting point. We still have a lot of work to do, as do, I'm sure, every couple, especially with DID, with learning how to interact with parts and some of my parts in the system, maybe withdrawing from him and him needing to learn how to interact just with parts in general. It is really new, obviously, for him to all of a sudden have parts that he may have interacted with before that he wasn't aware of, now wanting to interact more on a not hiding behind me. And some of those interactions have been positive. Some of them have been tough to where those parts have kind of hidden away from him. And I just want to put that out there that even if you are in a loving, supportive relationship, it doesn't mean it's always going to be so easy and smooth. It's going to be bumpy. There's going to be tension. I get cranky sometimes at like how you've talked about these other parts and now you've affected them this way. And he gets confused and frustrated. And then it's kind of like, okay, how do we navigate from here? But that's the reality of a relationship. It's just different when someone has DID and it's kind of like there's multiple people he's dealing with, in essence, who all have different feelings towards him. And some really like him, some don't. And that's something that we have to navigate
Nope.
together and also me in therapy one on one. And yeah, I would love to say it's smooth sailing. He's a unicorn man, which he is. He's my rock. And that magically, that just makes him know how to respond perfectly in every situation. That's not reality, not realistic. But as long as you're committed to the person that you open up to, whether it's a best friend, partner, therapist, if you both have each other's best interest in mind, you can get through it.
You encapsulated that so well. It's figuring it out together as you go along. It's another partnership.
Yeah, it is.
There isn't. I think many people would wish that there was this checklist, right? Start here, go,
Yes.
accomplish this, go to the next one, go to the next one. It just doesn't work like that. You're figuring it out and circling back and moving
Yep,
forward, moving back, circling around. Are there
definitely.
certain things out of curiosity that he does to support you that feel particularly helpful?
Giving me space, honestly, is one big one. He's always been good with that. He has always, I'll say, we've been married for almost 9 years. And from the start, he's been great at accommodating my needs without knowing. Neither of us knew what he was accommodating. We just knew I had needs. And for me, having space, alone time to decompress, to write, to listen to music, to draw, that is very accommodating. And we have 3 young children. I have a son who's almost 16 from a previous relationship. So together in this household, there's 4 children, and he will take them. He will take them out of the house. He will some days say, "Go upstairs early, I'll get the kids to bed," because he knows that I need that time, and that has shifted from what I use that time for. Now in the last year and a half, it's been I need that time to maybe communicate with the system, maybe to take a relaxing bath and just try to either zone out. Sometimes I watch YouTube videos on DID just to learn and listen to my internal system. That is something he does really, really well, is giving me the space I need. We're trying to get better on the communication aspect, which he's working on for sure. I do notice sometimes he's watching me, and I'm curious sometimes if he's trying to gauge, okay, who's out? What's going on? Which that in its own way, even if he's not verbalizing anything, is accommodating. There was a day recently where I was very like co-conscious blended with this part, but they were treating him terribly. I was horrified. I could see it. I could hear it. I and there was nothing I could do, which is horrifying to be in that situation. I'm like, I love this man. He's being so good to me. And this other part is just like being awful, not just being irritable, but just being awful. And he didn't really react in a negative way. That could have been a full-blown argument, and then I know that part would have retreated and I would have been left with that fallout because that has happened. But when he picks up on like, "Oh, this is not like me, this is another part," he's able to sometimes separate from that and interact, but not feed into it, and not as far as I know, he's not taking it personally. Who knows? He may have other thoughts on that, but it hasn't caused big issues. So, yeah, that's an accommodation in and of itself is him
Yeah.
trying to pick up on when there's another part out and how that might go down and not feeding into it.
Important one. I mean, when you think about it from whether it's a friend or partner's perspective, they're building new relationships with parts that they're just getting to know. So, like any relationship, it's going to have bumps as you learn people's preferences, what their triggers are, when to poke and when to not poke the bear, so to speak. You know,
Yes, exactly.
what about your day-to-day life now that you know that you're a system? Are there any types of tools or things that you do that just help you function better together? How do you also support each other through your days?
I'll be honest, that is still something I'm trying to figure out. I feel like most days I'm still stumbling through, not always knowing who's fronting, who I'm blended with, who's coming around, whose emotions am I feeling. And we're really in the thick of it in therapy and in my personal life. There's some big things going on that naturally is causing disruption within the system. And I'm really trying to figure out, okay, how do we work together? How do we get through day to day without feeling like I can't remember what happened or feeling like I'm in a fog all day, without feeling that panicked urge to, I have to get out of here. This is something I'm not quite learned yet. I'm in the thick of it and it's a learning experience for sure.
Yeah,
So I don't have an answer for that yet. It's just stumbling through trying to keep a grip on ourselves, internal communication. In the internal space, I do have, which just appeared one day. Some people say they create the world. It just appeared. It's really like, and I've heard other people describe this too, but it's a conference table. And like down the hall are rooms. And it's kind of whoever is at the conference table when I want to talk to them, that's who wants to cooperate. Sometimes there's one part, sometimes there's a lot. Usually the younger ones are not present. A lot of the parts are very protective of the younger ones and want them just to stay in their own little world, which I think is sweet, honestly. And then there's been times where I go to the inner world and I'm like, I need to communicate with you guys, and nobody's there. I see, like, in my mind's eye, I guess it's like the chairs are toppled over, there's papers everywhere, and it's clear that the whole system is in distress and
Um,
just wanting to not deal with anything. This is very new, trying to figure out how to get through the day in a cohesive way that's not just pure survival and confusion. So that's what I'm in the middle of now.
Yeah. I think it's really important for people to hear that, because you had mentioned earlier, oh, like a year, year and a half sounds like a long time. It's not. And
Yeah.
I really want people listening, whether it's therapists or systems themselves, to hear you when you say, I'm in the thick of it. I'm still figuring it out. I've known for a year and a half. I'm still in the thick of it. I'm figuring it out.
Yes.
And to also augment that with it shifts and changes over time too. What works for your system when you get it down can shift and change depending on what's happening in your personal life and how parts are impacted. So
Yes.
there's different things work for different systems. And there are some things that generally work for most of us, like having a meeting area in the inner world. A lot of
Yep.
us have put in intercom systems within our inner world so that we can make announcements and ask people to come, those sorts of
Yeah.
things. And there are parts that ignore those announcements too. Like you kind of figure it out, but I think it's really helpful to hear you share that.
Yeah, I do wanna add one thing to that because I have noticed this is very hard for me, but I have noticed if I can choose to let go of control, that sometimes things go better. One just quick example is I had a very hard therapy session one point a few months ago, and there was one part that took over on the drive home that we needed to be in the front to manage, whatever it was that came up from that session, but that part is not someone who can take care of our children. So when we and, like, I was somewhere in the back, like, I didn't have any say or control of what was going on, and so we got home, and then as soon as we got out of the car, a different part stepped forward, who was good with children, because I was in no mental state to be able to be there for my kids in the way they needed. This other part was there, and it just kind of, like, flowed very flawlessly, very seamlessly. I have, like, some awareness of that, but I was definitely not in control. And I would like to get to a point where things like that can happen, but on a more less stemming from a negative trigger, but
Yeah.
where we can just work together cohesively, where it's like, okay, I'm tapping out, you tap in. And we'll see how that
Yeah.
journey goes, how that works in the future. But hands hands off is very hard to do, but sometimes it does take trusting parts of your system for what their jobs are and what they can do.
Yeah. And to remember, right, your system was built for survival and to protect you.
Yes.
The vast majority of times, they don't let you down.
Yeah, it's true.
Somebody usually steps up to take care of whatever it is that's happening. And we can agree some parts are better than others at certain tasks,
Yes.
but usually they get taken care of one way or the other.
Yeah.
What do you wish that somebody had told you when you first figured out that you were a system?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, there's not something that I wish someone told me that I wasn't told. It's actually something that I wish I listened to that somebody told me early on. So, this friend I have that I had for years who also has DID, that it was like, again, I kind of all of a sudden remembered, oh, wait, they have this. And I started talking to them. They had told me it's really easy in the
Mhm.
beginning to get real excited and worked up and want to just dive in and figure everything out and just go wild, which is what I was starting to do. They pretty much indicated to me that slowing down is a good thing to do.
Mhm.
And they had told me the mistake a lot of systems make, newer discovered ones, is going full speed ahead and trying to uncover everything. I heard them give that advice, but I felt like, nah, I'm good. Like, we're just going to keep digging. And that quickly led to a lot of dysregulation, getting some fragmented memory flashbacks that I hadn't had before that I don't think the system was ready to deal with. digging through so much of my historical life, going through so many things, full speed ahead. It's the quickest way to lead to burnout, overwhelm, system shutdown, them pulling away, them not trusting you if you're the host. I wish I would have listened to that advice to slow down, trust the system, let things come out at the pace at what they want to let you know things, and to just trust them. That slow down and trust the system and let things happen at the pace that they need to happen. That is something I wish that I had latched onto as soon as I was told that. I think that that's important.
A great piece of advice. And it's also one that's hard to follow, right? Because when you figure out your system, the curiosity level is, curiosity dances with denial through a lot of things.
Yes. Yes.
And it can feel a little irresistible sometimes. But yeah, if you get overwhelmed, the reason that your system was created in the first place will be solidified. And that can sometimes for people lead to increased amnestic barriers
Yes.
and things that are just kind of hard, that make your day hard.
Yes. Exactly.
What would you say to somebody who might be sitting here listening, wondering if they're a system or not, and they're leaning towards, gosh, I really think that I am. What would you
Yeah.
like to say to them?
Someone who is newly discovering this and maybe on the back and forth, am I not, leaning towards, yes, I am. I think if someone can hear me and believe it, it sounds so basic, but you will be okay because it can feel like your world is falling apart, like everything is shifting, like the floor's fallen out from beneath your feet. It feels like you're questioning your whole reality once you start to grasp these things. And it can feel like you're going backwards and that life is not going to be okay. I'm still in the middle of it, but I do hold on to the fact that I'm going to be okay. We are going to be okay. I think for the most part, we're going to be okay. It's going to be hard. It's going to be scary. Some days are gonna be absolutely heartbreaking and devastating. You're not gonna wanna get out of bed for days at a time. It's a journey, definitely a journey roller coaster ride. On the quiet days where it's quiet, you're gonna doubt yourself. That is absolutely, absolutely normal. And I've said this earlier, but one of the biggest things is to trust yourself. Trust your intuition, trust your parts, trust what the system wants you to know, trust the speed at which they want you to know things, even if it's slow and it feels awful. Trust yourself. So many of us struggle with self doubt, which makes sense based off of what a lot of us probably experienced, which led to DID. So, regardless of what people have instilled in you or you believe, just hold on to yourself, trust yourself. You will be okay.
Love that. Such a great message. How has, if at all, how has the discovery of being a system changed potentially how you see your future? Like, do you have any hopes or goals now that you didn't have before, or something that maybe didn't feel possible before that now does feel possible?
I With it still being so early again, I mean, I have a lot of this feels heavy and negative. A lot of it also though, I have glimpses of excitement and feeling positive. There have always been so many aspects to myself that I have loved, but I have not been able to hold on to at the same time. Sometimes I can be really good in the kitchen and creative, and I don't really even need a recipe. I can make these great meals. And then all of a sudden, it's as if that ability and that knowledge and that skill is gone. I can't access it. I struggle with reading and understanding a recipe. The art aspect that used to be really big in my life, and I used to play guitar and do music and really thrived in that. And then all of a sudden, that disappeared from me. I felt like I lost that part. I could go on. There's so many examples, and it always felt like I love this part of me, but why can't I also have do this while I'm also doing this? It was very fragmented. So even though it's on maybe a more surface level for me, I do have a massive hope and excitement of thinking about the possibility of sometime down the line when my system is a little more cohesive and barriers are down, really being able to flow seamlessly throughout all of these things that I enjoy without it being so fragmented, so compartmentalized. I can enjoy all of it and feel a little more, I don't know if I want to use the word whole, but I think that's the best way I can describe it. Maybe just more close knit. We're just much more close knit, and it just flows. I have excitement and look forward to just having all of my parts come together, I think, and really work together because I get excited of who we can be and what we can actually do and accomplish.
You can feel the love that you have for your system just kind of coming through the screen. The desire to be a cohesive whole system that works fluidly together is so clear.
Yeah. I want that so, so badly, and there are other parts that want it, and of course, there are parts that I'm still discovering and parts that maybe think that's a bad idea. I honestly look forward to getting to know these other parts that seem dark and scary, and because they exist for a reason, and I feel like some of those parts that are the dark and scary and don't feel necessarily good sometimes when I feel them, I think that some of those can in turn at some point be some of the powerhouses of the system in a positive, not self-destructive way. And I'm really curious and excited about getting to know what all of that will look like. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be years down the road, or I know like you have said and others have said you're years into this and it's still a journey. So I have no expectation of getting to an ending point, but I would like to get further, a little further.
Truthfully, I feel like in general, the evolution of the human doesn't have an endpoint, but it
Yeah.
it is this ongoing journey of transformation, which is exciting and sometimes
Mhm.
hard, but very real. And when it's grounded in love, it makes it a lot easier. I think
Yeah.
compassion is so important.
Yes. That compassion is key. Compassion and curiosity, empathy, and yeah,
Yeah,
all of those.
I wholeheartedly support all of those things. Do you have any words that you would like to leave folks with as we wrap up today?
Just honestly, thank you for listening and giving the time. I do recommend this podcast. If this is one of the first ones you're listening to, do what I did, go all the way back to the start.
Oh, thank you.
Great, great resources, and just find online community. You know, have some discretion with that, but there is a really good community out there of people with DID, OSDD. It's yeah, it's great. Find yourself in online space.
There really is a really great community out there. Speaking of which, in the show notes, we will drop your Instagram handle so that people can find you if they would like to connect with you, which I'm sure they will. And truly, we can't thank you enough for being with us today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
To everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us today. There were some really great takeaways from the shadow system, and we truly hope you enjoyed it. If you found value, please feel free to share it with others who might benefit. And to make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to our Substack for weekly blogs that often come with downloadables to help you in your healing. And follow us on Instagram at Healing My Parts for bite sized nuggets around system life and healing. Until next time, let's keep healing. Thank you for tuning in. You can find our blog on Substack at healingmyparts.substack.com and on Instagram at healingmyparts. Just a disclaimer, any information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for professional therapy or behavioral health care, nor does listening to the podcast constitute a therapist-client relationship. Please be sure to take extra good care of you. And until next time, keep healing and thriving.